And among the perfect beings, I am the Savior of love. 27. Ujjai Pravasam Ashvanam Vitimam Amritom Bhavam Ayaham Gajendanam Maranam Charanam. The verses normally to be Ujjai Pravasam, who wrote out of Solomon. But locally elephants, I love them, and among men, I am one. Ayunanam aham vajnam, bhunam asnidamani, vajanashcha srigandanam, sarvanam asnivasati. And must be achieved. Text 29. Anantashasnidadhanam Narakamtasarvaham Vitrina Ayamachasmi Namasam Yamatavaham. Translation. Celestial Naga saints, I am Ananda. Of the part of these, I am Varuna. Of departed ancestors, I am Ayama. And among the dispensers of law, I am the number, Lord of death. That's the reading. Among the dietary beings, I am the devotee of God. Among the subdues, I am time. Among the beasts, I am the mind. And among the birds, I am the Buddha, the second king of Vishnu. Text 31. Avana Avana Asmi Rama Shastra Vinaham Jashanam Mukaratnam Prokasam Asminanavi. Translated. Of purifiers I am the wind, of rulers and weapons I am the ground, of fishing I am the shark, and of flowing rivers I am the mountains. 32. Sarvanam Adiram Ashtam, Vantam Charya Vivarjanam, Adhyamadi Adhyadyanam, Va'alam. Translation. Of all creations, I am the beginning, and the end, and also the middle. O Arjuna, of all sciences, I am the spiritual science of the self, and among logicians, I am the inclusive truth.
It's not going through Zoom one. I'm gonna get close.
Chapter 10. Translation. Of the Vedas, I am the Sama Veda. Of the demigods, I am the Buddha. Of the senses, I am the mind. Of the living beings, I am the living force. Knowledge. The difference between matter and spirit is that matter has no consciousness like an entity, Therefore, this consciousness is supreme and eternal. Consciousness cannot be produced by a combination of matter. Life comes from you. So, conscious living entities produce other conscious living entities, not the child is born from the rubbing of two stones. When have we seen the two stones will produce a young boy? So, Prabhupada is touching that. We basically discussing the subject matter of the translation, not necessarily how Krishna is describing himself as being represented by those different details. Of course, we can understand that Krishna is the living force himself. So the word
Chaitana. So Chaita. We have a few words with this word. There's a famous verse. Does anybody know it? Okay, nice one. So Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam, right? So that Chaitanas means conscious living entity, conscious person, practically, Krishna in that verse, which is, I think it's stated in the Katha Upanishad, right? That there's many eternal living entities and there's a singular living eternal entity who's maintaining the plural eternals, and there's one conscious living entity who's maintaining the plural conscious living entities. So Chaitana means conscious, living force. So actually, Chaitanya is actually referring to that living force. And actually, the impersonalists are fond of using this word Chaitanya, though they don't necessarily, at least at the time, it was described that his name was something with the P, right? Slipping my brain right now. The name of the Mayavadi, which, was it Prakashananda Saraswati, right? Yes. So he was described that he would chant Chaitanya, Atma, this and that, other words which are more vague, but he couldn't ever even vibrate the name Krishna. He couldn't actually say that name. He wasn't allowed. Krishna didn't let his tongue vibrate that holy sound. So Chaitanya. So this word is sometimes used by some impersonalists, but Krishna is saying here, I am that living force, right? So there's another word, there's another Sanskrit, which is Cheto Dharpanamarjanam, which means that we cleanse the consciousness, the living force, knowledge. So Chit, Sat Chit Ananda, Chit. So knowledge, living force, Chaitana rather, is referring to this Chit, Shakti, or this Chit potency of the Supreme Lord, which is this consciousness. So this consciousness is not produced by a combination of matter. You can see many arguments for this in the Life Comes from Life book. And we have no practical experience of this ever happening, that matter produces consciousness. There's no practical experience. So they're giving some hypothesis, and they're actually dogmatically continuing on, assuming that life is not originally produced by a person, and they propose that life comes from matter without any evidence. It's not very scientific. So the difference between matter and spirit, this is very important. And later on, as we heard in some of the later verses, Krishna describes himself that he is that spiritual science. Of all sciences, I am the spiritual science of the self, right? So these so-called scientists are describing that life comes from matter, but Krishna is saying that the real topmost science is the science of the self, which begins with understanding spirit versus matter, right? Who am I? Am I body? Am I the body? Am I matter or am I spirit? So Prabhupada, he has many awesome discussions. And you can find them in some of the compilation books that the BBT has printed, like Journey of Self-Discovery and Science of Self-Realization. And I'm studying the Journey of Self-Discovery right now, and the arguments presented there are very intriguing and very simple. And Prabhupada points out here that the beginning or the preliminary details, of spiritual life, or the beginning of spiritual life, or the beginning of spiritual advancement only starts really at this point when you try to understand the difference between the body and the spirit, yourself. Who are you? And more or less your difference from the material body. So the body has been changing so many lifetimes according to karma. And we are the eternal spirit soul who's transmigrating in such bodies. And by nature's law, it's working perfectly so that we transmigrate according to what we deserve and what we want. Just like, there's an example, just like if we contact the disease, then we ourselves will develop that disease in due course and will show the symptoms of that disease, right? And similarly, by our activities, nature's law works so perfectly. Nature's law acts automatically according to our karma. So if we act in a sinful way or we perform vicious activities not meant to be performed in the human form of life, then we'll receive the result of that according to the laws of nature. So in this human form of life, we're not supposed to be concerned with the happiness and distress that is incumbent with having a material body. So we've been discussing like the past few days about how, we're not supposed to, it was stated in the purport to yesterday's shloka 10.11 that the devotee doesn't have to worry about his personal maintenance. He actually doesn't have to have any anxieties besides just staying engaged in Krishna's service. And there's a few points that came up in our mind, a little bit of some doubts or some concerns that, hey, it's not very reasonable for me. I always worry about my maintenance. I always worry about my body. I always worry about all these things. Why are we worrying? Because suffering is just around the corner. We know suffering is always just around the corner, and we want to do everything possible to avoid it. But according to Prabhupada, in this lecture that I'm listening to, or I'm reading in this Journey of Self-Discovery, part 5 of chapter 1, Prabhupada's saying, body means that you have to suffer. Game over. Question finished. Body means you have to suffer. But we are not the body. But as long as we have this body, we have to suffer. So there's no point in, there's literally no logical reason to try to individually make a piecemeal solution to all the variegated sufferings that we're experiencing now and that we could possibly experience in the future. And it's unlimited. And the mind, which is let off the chain, can imagine unlimited quantities of ways that we can suffer. Right? Who thought of a way that they could suffer today? Did anybody worry about something that could happen to them that they were actually worried that would be a cause of suffering for them in the future? Right? Right? I got this cut on my finger and I was worried today that it may become agitated or disturbed if I don't keep it clean. Right? Or there may be something, I'm worried if I don't do enough Harinam, then I'll fall into Maya. Right? I'm worried that this, of course, that's a spiritual worry, so that's good. The mosquitoes, right? These things are really, it's really troublesome actually. So we have so many worries, and that's just a few small things which come into our head. But in the material consciousness, we're not protected by japa. We're not protected by the deity seva. We're not protected by kirtan. We're not protected by prasadam. Our mind is even more disturbed with all these troubles and worries. But as devotees, we have to understand body means we have to suffer. So we can chalk it up as a loss. I have to suffer. Why do I have to spend so much time worrying about it? Let me worry about developing my body so I don't have to suffer. Let me ask the question, why am I being forced to suffer against my will? Not how can I solve this problem? No, understand, you must suffer because you have a body. But why do I have this body? Or why does having this body mean I have to suffer? This is called human life. Brahmo Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Actually, Jigyasa. Right? Atato Brahma Jigyasa. So we have to consider this. We have to ask these questions, and we must come to the knowledge that I am not the body, I am soul. I've gotten this body by my karma. So whatever suffering we experience, we just chalk it up. I was a sinful person and I deserve everything and worse. So why am I spending so much time trying to mitigate all of it? I should instead spend my time trying to spread the Sankirtan movement. Right? I should spend my time and my energy trying to cooperatively endeavor with the devotees under Srila Prabhupada's shelter to spread this movement to everybody. And I got to do this to save myself. I'm doing this preaching to save myself because I'm in danger, because I got a material body, because my chaitana, my chaito is not clean. Chaito dharpana marjanam. The mirror of my consciousness is, or this, my heart is contaminated with so many lusty material desires. I think I'm this body, therefore I'm trying to satisfy this body by all means. This is a really interesting, there's a cool verse which is described that, here it is. Nunam pramata kurute vikarna yad indriya pritaya aprinoti nasadu manye yata atmano yang asan api kleshada asa deha. Quote, people who act only for sense gratification are certainly mad, and they perform all kinds of abominable activities. In this way, they ensure their transmigration from body to body perpetually, and thus experience all kinds of miseries. So, Because of ignorance, we don't understand that the body is always going to give us pain. The word here is used, kleshada. So matter is such that it's always deteriorating. Matter is such that it's always mutable, but spirit is unchangeable. We are unchangeable, but we are experiencing the material body constantly changing, which is totally fearful for the living entity who's eternal. He doesn't want any temporary situations. He doesn't want to see his endeavors turn to dust. He doesn't want to see his money and his wealth and his power, his prestige turn to nilch, zip. At the blink of an eye, from hero to zero. But we're so ignorant. We're so silly. We don't understand that having this material body and everything accompanied with it means kleshada, right? Which means that it always gives us pain. Klesha. There's different kinds of kleshas, right? Adi, yatmika klesha, Adi, bhautika klesha, and Adi, dhaivika klesha, right? Miseries inflicted. Klesha means miseries or sufferings. Pain. It means pain. So we're not understanding. Having this body means we must experience pain. There's no question. So everybody in the material world is always working hard like anything to minimize these pains, but it's not possible. It's not possible until you come to Shuddha Sattva. Because even if you're in Sattva Gun and you're conditioned by a sense of happiness, still you're under the influence of the mixed modes. Still passion and ignorance are going to sneak in. So until you get to Shuddha Sattva, or the transcendental state, Vasudeva state of consciousness, pure Krishna consciousness, then there's no way you'll be free from all sufferings. So that's how we solve the problem. Not by anything less. So we have to watch our consciousness. We're always trying to solve problems. That's our nature. We're always trying to minimize suffering. That's our nature. It's normal. But the way to minimize suffering is to serve the spiritual master as a menial servant, to serve the spiritual master's transcendental instructions as tightly as possible. What is it said? Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati. Uttama Gati means the ultimate goal. Shri Guru Charane Rati. Rati means attachment. Attachment for the Lord, for the spiritual master's lotus feet is the supreme goal or the supreme destination. Gati is a word which means that place we have to go to. So when we become surrendered to his lotus feet, which means not necessarily that we're always thinking about his physical feet, but that we're always surrendered to his transcendental instructions and trying to execute his order at all times and all places. How would he want me to breathe? How would he want me to walk? How would he want me to sit? How will he want me to act? How will he want me to speak? How will he want me to plan? How will he want me to write? How will he want me to read? Right? This type of attachment for satisfying the spiritual master, that is how we get free from all these sufferings, not a piecewise. That one switch, Shri Guru Charane Rati, attachment for satisfying the instructions of the spiritual master. That's it. One switch. So the pleasure of this material world, right, is like being dunked in a river, and we get a gasp of fresh air, and we think that that's pleasure, and gasping for fresh air. It's actually a punishment, right? It's a punishment, but we are so ignorant of the reality of this material world that we are taking relief from the punishment as a pleasure. And we're very satisfied. No, I don't want to leave. Let me suffer here. I'll just get repeated momentary relief from my incredibly disturbing situation. So it's not very intelligent. And so this is why Sanatan Goswami, he said, Ke Ami, right? Which means, who am I? And why am I suffering threefold miseries? So this is the human platform. We're meant to come here, not be dull like animals, right? If we're dull like the animals, they're not asking why. They're suffering. Everybody knows that. Cats are licking their butt. What's wrong? Let me become a cat. I'll also do that. Not very elevated, right? No, they're suffering like anything, but they can't ask why they're suffering. They can't clean themselves properly except for their mouth. It's so strange. They're forced to clean themselves with their own mouth. Totally strange. Totally abominable. Right? They can't ask why. We should ask why. Why am I suffering? And, right, we're meant to understand this. That ultimately, Lord Sri Krishna is the source of our very consciousness, our very self. He's the soul of the soul. He's the super soul. He's the maintainer of all the unlimited conscious living entities. And he's satisfying our desires from time immemorial. And we're meant to render service to him, become grateful to him, as Maturnath was mentioning this morning, meant to become grateful and then show that gratitude by service, right? Prabhupada took this word, bhakti yoga. And I was hearing a lecture that Tamal Krishna Goswami, he analyzed some things from Srila Prabhupada's teachings, and he called this word loving devotional service, right? Devotional service. That was one of the Mahavakyas of Srila Prabhupada. Mahavakya means a very great teaching, great utterance. He used this word, Krishna consciousness, which is actually a translation of a phrase given by Rupa Goswami. I don't know that Sanskrit, pardon me. It's very interesting, very beautiful Sanskrit. But Prabhupada described it as Krishna consciousness. And he used this word all over the place, Krishna consciousness. But another one was this devotional service. He translated bhakti as devotional service, which is the real life of the living entity. It's the real essence of the living entity. Prayojana means that it's the ultimate goal of the living entity is to engage in pure devotional service. Uttama bhakti, pure devotional service. Of course, there's different stages. Sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, prema bhakti, right? Like that. So, Prabhupada would say, devotional service, loving devotional service. Out of love, the living entity naturally, spontaneously wants to serve the Lord in an increasing ways, eternally, ever deeper. Bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam. Every step, the ocean is increasing. And the devotee is constantly diving in that ocean. And he doesn't even care if he has to take birth again and again. What does he say? He says, Janmani Janmanishvare. Right? Or he says, Janame Janame Hoy, E Abhilash. What is that? He wants to live with the devotees. Why? Because as soon as you live with them, you're going to be pushed to do devotional service. There's always going to be pressure, right? Who is pressured in the material world to engage in sense gratification? Did you ever not want to do something? And they said, don't be a wuss. Right? It doesn't feel very nice. But when the devotees say, hey, go to the next level, increase your surrender, it's going to be great. You're going to be so much more blissful. You're going to be so much more satisfied. You're going to feel so much more at home when you surrender the next level. Don't worry. Krishna will help you every step of the way. Krishna carries what you lack and he preserves what you have. So don't worry. You're going to be fine. Surrender deeper. Go deeper. So there's always pressure, right? But one pressure is informed by knowledge. What is that knowledge? Essentially, that knowledge begins with knowing matter versus spirit. And nobody can understand our philosophy until they understand matter versus spirit. And I catch myself day after day after day. I'm trying to have philosophical conversations with people, and I'm not even reminding them of the basics. And Prabhupada would take so many lectures just reminding everybody matter versus spirit. You are not that body. You're not a male. Don't be attracted to the opposite sex unnecessarily. You're not the female. Don't be attracted unnecessarily. You're not a body. You're not a human. Don't be accumulating wealth unnecessarily. Minimums, needs. Take care of your needs. Prosecute your real duty. Right? Needs are there. Needs of the body we can understand. So there is a certain amount of needs. Eating, mating, sleeping, and defending. Right? That's there, right? So Prabhupada would again and again remind us, take care of your real duty. Understand matter versus spirit. You are the living force within the body, and there's actually two souls within every body. One being the super soul, who you're meant to serve with love and devotion. And you actually have an eternal relationship with that person. It's not that it has to be imposed upon you. You have it eternally. Just awaken to that. Awaken to that reality. Awaken to that existence of bliss and knowledge. Right? And then he says, so he gives all this philosophy. And he says the easy way is just to chant Hare Krishna. Just chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Lecture over. Why are we doing that? Why? Because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave that process. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. You can stop this blazing forest fire simply by chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Of course, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. 8 verses of deepening. Right? From the first Shikshashtaka verse on deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. But that's the start. So it was amazing. Prabhupada, he's always giving this. One hand, he's speaking this knowledge, starting from ground zero. You're not the body. You're not made of matter. You're not from this place. You're from the spiritual world. You're the living force within the body, and the sustenance of your very self is actually Krishna, because you're a part of Krishna. Mamai vangsho jiva loke. You have no sustenance without him. You can't exist without his support. Actually, everything is resting on him as pearls are strung on a thread. And actually, Denver Maharaj was reflecting on this, and he was saying that the scientists, they say, well, you can't prove that there's God. And then we say, have you ever seen a pearl necklace? Can you see the string inside? No. But you see the pearls, don't you? Yes. Krishna is like that. You cannot see him underneath everything, but he's there connecting everything together. So if they can be fooled by a simple necklace, what's to say they shouldn't, there's no possible way that they're not seeing God's hand. They can be illusioned by a simple necklace. They can't see the inside of this. They can't see there's a string connecting these. You can't see with your own senses. If you're fooled by a simple necklace, how God can't be imperceivable to you? So much greater than a simple necklace of this material world. So that's some argument. So Krishna is there behind everything. I took a long time on this, and I kind of wanted to share a little bit of reflections from my reading earlier. So I really appreciate your kind attention, devotees. And I please ask you for any forgiveness. I ask you for forgiveness for any offenses or for any improper speech or inappropriate tone of voice and explanations. And thank you so much. Are there some questions on these topics, or Jaikeshwar Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. So I've heard that devotional service doesn't start until a person formally takes initiation. So if that's true, what is the time period then called before someone takes initiation?
Well, Rupa Goswami describes there's actually 9 stages of bhakti, right? And practically speaking, like 7 of those are in the sadhana bhakti stages. This is my understanding. So before bhava, then there's all those other stages, like first stage is shraddha, which means faith, or maybe even a little appreciation, right? Then comes sadhu sangha, right? So these are part of sadhana bhakti. They are. But Prabhupada used this language. If somebody doesn't become initiated by the bona fide spiritual master with the proper process, right? Which we understand to mean you do mutual testing. This is described by Srila Prabhupada in some of his books. And we have that compilation in the Vedic paradigm. There's a few really important chapters there about guru, disciple succession, parampara, like that. It's very important. Guru-disciple relationship. There's a little section which is titled Mutual Testing. And Prabhupada describes that really to make the connection real with the spiritual master, you have to mutually test each other, which means you have to spend a minimum of 6 months' time, according to Sanatan Goswami. He gave these things in the Hari Bhakti Vilas. This isn't just science. You have to mutually test each other. It means you have to observe him, right? And he has to observe you. You observe him for 6 months while you practice all the principles of devotional service. And after that time, you've determined if he is the type of spiritual master who you can surrender to personally and follow his order as he asks you to. Then You ask him to accept you as an aspiring disciple. Then he formally tests you for 6 months. More. 1 year's time, mutual testing. Then he can give you Diksha. At that time, Prabhupada says, if you don't do that, which we just described, the formal connection or the real connection with Krishna consciousness is never made. He uses those words. It's in the Nectar Devotion, right? He speaks that way. The real connection with Krishna consciousness is never made. Someone can say, hey, what's going on? Right? I'm not doing anything before that. What is that? No, it's preparatory. And actually, to be 100% honest, even until further stages, our real business hasn't began, But Prabhupada describes that initiation means the beginning. So we work hard, just like this. It costs $100 to get initiated by the bona fide spiritual master with the proper process, right? It costs $100. Every day you chant your rounds before you're initiated, you get some, little scratch, and you put that in the account, and you never lose that. You never lose that account, that balance. But you have to make $100 and you have to pay it to the bona fide spiritual master. You got to do the real connection. Then you get blessings from the parampara, and they give you the Maha Mantra, which is empowered by their transcendental mouths. That Maha Mantra very quickly purifies the conditioned living entity. Otherwise, a mantra which is not received through the authorized system of disciplic succession has no potency. It doesn't have potency on us. Many people chant Hare Krishna without being authorized by the bona fide spiritual master, and there's no potency. So, have some faith. Krishna reciprocates, gives you the spiritual master, and gives you the spiritual master's associates. Associate until you get enough money to pay for the bona fide initiation, and you're well on your way. So they're all part of the process, and it's all chalked up in sadhana bhakti. But the third stage means you get formally initiated in the proper process by the proper person, and you can start formally at that time. Is that okay? Okay, devotees, thank you so much for tolerating me. Again, please forgive me for any offenses, any forwardness, any bluntness, inappropriate language. And thank you so much for all your participation in this transcendental Sankirtan movement. Srimad Bhagavad